Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name's Leora and I talk on here about books, reading, writing and sometimes other stuff as well. And today I am making a video with my summer poetry reading recommendations. This video was requested via Instagram. When I first read the request, I was like, that is a great idea. I don't feel that I have enough poetry to recommend to you guys though. So then I frantically started reading poetry in the last few days. And then at one point I was like, you know what? There's quite a few collections or poets that I've read from that I've not maybe like finished something from back to back, but that I own things from, that I've read multiple excerpts from and that I really enjoyed. So I was like, you know what? I'll just compile books that I have read and books that I've read bits from, and I'll just throw it on the internet and you guys can, you can just run with it. It's fine. So that is what we're doing here today. I have a few of my favorite poets in here. I have a few in here that I have not read as much from, so it's a nice mix. So let's get into it. So first up, we have two collections by Billy Collins, and I also own his most recent collection, The Trouble with Poetry and Other Poems, but I do not know where I have put it, so I guess we're just gonna go with these two. So we have The Apple That Astonished Paris, which I think is one of my favorites from him, and my other favorite from him is Whale Day, and I think his most recent one I gave like 3 stars, and I think both of these were 4 or 5 stars, so I recommend these more anyway. So before telling you what other people describe these like, I just want to say that I like that Billy Collins writes sort of silly poetry, which is my favorite kind of poetry. So a lot of the poems he writes are just like a little bit funny. They're still sad and thoughtful and thought-provoking and like very lyrical and beautiful, but he's just very funny, and not everything is like difficult and heavy. And lots of things in his poetry are like the everyday things, like the sunshine, a morning in Paris, spring flowers, so it's just very vibey, and that's what I really enjoy about it. What the professionals are saying about it in a far more eloquent way than I was just describing it. Billy Collins' Whale Day sees one of our most admired poets at his wisest and most clear-sighted. Working by whim and whimsy, Collins fills these new poems with strange conceits and fanciful acrobatics. He takes us for a walk with an impossibly ancient dog, discovers the proper way to eat a banana, meets an Irish spider, and even invites us to his own funeral. At the same time, these playful imaginings are commonly grounded in everyday experience. Animated by both the wonders of being alive and the thrill of mortality, these new poems solidify Collins' reputation as one of our most necessary writers. Now, let me see if I can find a few of my favourite poems in here. And this is one of my favourite poems, which is called Paris in May. I'll read just like a little tidbit from it. A teddy bear in a store window, 3 house painters, waiting to cross a boulevard. A woman in a cafe, her red nails, on a man's nape while she smokes. What are we to make of all this? And another favourite that they also describe on the back is Walking My 75-Year-Old Dog, which is just a very funny poem. It's silly and funny and accessible, and I just think it's very beautiful as well. And then The Apple That Astonished Paris has like a little bit of dark academia vibes here and there, because it describes like studying and writers sitting at their desks and like sort of nights in bookstores, and I don't know. It was very atmospheric. And it also has a few poems about travelling and discovering new places. This is from Strange Lands. The photographs of the summer trip are spread across the table now like little mirrors, reflecting our place in European history. They are the booty of travel, bordered and colourful. Split seconds that we pass to friends after dinner, one by one to make them believe we really found some sweet elsewhere, away from here. There's even a poem about the beach in here. Summer poetry. What more can you ask for? Then of course I have to recommend you some Mary Oliver. This is Felicity. Look at that cover. It is so beautiful. I love all the pinks. So Mary Oliver does a lot of landscape describing, which sounds dull, but it's really just not. And I'm not sure how she does it, but it's really wonderful. And in Felicity, she's sort of exploring what it means to love another person, and she does so through the lens of nature. One of my favorite poems in here is very short, but it's called Don't Worry. Don't worry. Things take the time they take. Don't worry. How many roads did St. Augustine follow before he became St. Augustine? It's so simple, but it's just, it's so nice. I think it's the opening poem as well, I just noticed that. Another one which I really adored is Nothing is too small not to be wondered about. The cricket doesn't wonder if there's a heaven, or if there's room for him. It's fall, romance is over, still he sings. If he can, he enters a house through the tiniest crack under the door. Then the house grows colder. He sings slower and slower. Then nothing. This must mean something, I don't know what. But certainly it doesn't mean he hasn't been an excellent cricket all his life. It's the little things, and she admires and shows the little things in life and how beautiful it is, and I just really adore that. There's many more poems in this I really enjoy. I could read like all of it to you because I'm so enthusiastic about it, but I'm not going to do that, and I'm just going to tell you, pick it up because it's really good. Then another poet who loves to whine on and on and on about nature is Edward Thomas, who literally writes poems about hills, and it's very fun. I picked this up from the secondhand bookstore and I was utterly lost whilst reading it. Like, lots of these poems went right over my head, but I still had a great time because some of them have such beautiful writing and really inspired me, you know, and made me want to read and write, and I just think he's a wonderful writer. But some of these I was not sure what was happening, I'll admit that to you. I have made some fun annotations in this that I really want to tell you. This is the poem When First, and my commentary on it is, imagine you love a hill so much you write it a love poem. And that is what Edward Thomas did. Let me read an excerpt. One thing I know, that love with chance and use in time and necessity will grow, and louder the hearts dance at parting than meeting be. Really beautiful, right? I really enjoy that. Then on the poem Melancholy, I wrote down, POV, you like birds more than people. It's true. That is my interpretation of this. In The Manor Farm, he writes about seasons, and it's very beautiful. The winter's cheek flushed as if he had drained, spring, summer and autumn at a draught, and smiled quietly, but it was not winter. Rather a season of bliss unchangeable, awakened from farm and church where it had lain, safe under tile and thatch for ages, since this England old already was called merry. I've no idea what he's on about, but rather a season of bliss unchangeable, that's so beautiful. Also write some poems about rain, cats, brooks, all these kind of things. I really enjoyed it, even though there's a few poems in there that I don't know what's going on. Ah, look at me and my cute little annotations. I do recommend it. Maybe if you're just getting into poetry, do not start with this one, because it's definitely not as if every poem in this is amazing and you'll get through it really quickly. I don't think it's as accessible as, for example, Billy Collins, but I still really enjoyed this book. Another one of my favourite poets is Wendy Cope, and this is her bundle Serious Concerns, which I have tabbed excessively. I really love this poetry collection and it's very accessible. I highly recommend you to pick it up. One of my favourite poems of all time that is very popular on the internet as well is in here, and I would love to read it to you again, even though I've probably read it to you before on this channel. It is this one, and it is called The Orange, and yes, I have drawn in my book, and you cannot stop me because it is my own book. The orange. At lunchtime, I bought a huge orange. The size of it made us all laugh. I peeled it and shared it with Robert and Dave. They got quarters and I had a half. And that orange, it made me so happy, as ordinary things often do. Just lately, the shopping, a walk in the park. This is peace and contentment. It's new. The rest of the day was quite easy. I did all the jobs on my list and enjoyed them and had some time over. I love you. I'm glad I exist. Ah, it's so nice. So that's one of my favourite works by Wendy Cope. And then Tumps is also a poem that's in here, which is very funny. Don't ask him the time of day, he won't know it, for he's the abstracted sort. In fact, he's a typically useless male poet. We'll call him a tump for short. This is a poem composed in Santa Barbara. The poets talk. They talk a lot. They talk of T.S. Eliot. One is anti, one is pro. How hard they think, how much they know. They're happy, a cicada sings. We women talk of other things. Ah, the rhythm! It's just amazing. I love it. If you have any poets that remind you of Wendy Cope, please recommend them to me because I would love to hear. And last but not least, I want to recommend Sharks in the Rivers by Ada Limon, which is one of those poets that I desperately want to read more from. I've only recently discovered her work. I had seen it floating around, but I hadn't really read any of it. And I've come to believe this is one of her earlier books, and I know that lots of people like her later ones much better, but I think this one is definitely accessible, and I really enjoyed it. It says, the speaker in this extraordinary collection finds herself dislocated. From her childhood in California, from her family's roots in Mexico, from a dying parent, from her prior self. The world is always in motion, both toward and away from us. I think that's definitely a good description. What this doesn't cover though, that this book is deeply sad but sort of funny and tragic at the same time, which I always really appreciate in any sort of read. I've bookmarked so much in the digital edition of this book because I just really enjoyed it, and always when I'm reading poetry and there's like specific poems or bits that I love a lot, I start annotating like a madman. You might have noticed in all my poetry books that I've shown you. I just get really enthusiastic, you know, and I get inspired for my own writing and I'm like, oh my god, I need to somehow save this beautiful poetry. This is an excerpt from The Russian River, which I think is one of the poems that fits the season summer the best from this entire collection. It was 98 degrees and even with the windows open, it was hard to breathe. Outside of Guerneville we found the party, beautiful bodies jumping, off the cliffs, Into the deepest part, a raft of natural, naked women floating like an old cigarette ad down the current. I was going to marry you. Hours into the afternoon, we swam to each other and walked upriver. I remember thinking this was what life was, and what I had always wanted. Being pressed on a warm flat rock, our wet imprint. There, as if it would matter, I am holding on. I am holding on. This is like an experience that is so recognizable, but at the same time, she writes it in such a beautiful way that you feel detached from it a little bit, which I think is very special. Another beautiful excerpt. Past the lavender bushes and the big new buds of peonies, an orange-tailed sun god came to welcome her home. Buzzing wings, within its trill there is suspension. Sometimes poets just use such beautiful words and you're left sitting there like, wow, that was beautiful. This is from one of my favorite poems from the collection, The Same Thing. You miss everyone, even the people you read about today. You didn't know their faces on the brain as if on paper. You sit on the balcony, which is really a fire escape, but you call it the balcony to make it sound better. You wear the slip your grandmother gave you 15 years ago. The weather is nice, California nice. You sing a little, call your family, you think, things aren't so bad. You say you love the world, so you love the world. Ah, that's beautiful. Me after reading each and every one of these poems to you. So lots of beautiful poems, sad but funny as well. And this fragment from one of the first poems made me laugh out loud. This is from Sharks in the Rivers. Sharks bite fewer people each year than New Yorkers do, according to the health department records. Then she sends me on my way into the city of sharks. I thought that was really fun. So those were some of my favorite poems, poetry collections, poets, and works that I really love and adore. Definitely let me know in the comments down below what are some of your favorite poems, poetry collections, etc, etc. I really hope this video was helpful. I don't feel like I'm the most knowledgeable person out there on poetry, but I do really enjoy poetry and I want to read more of it in the future. So if you have any wonderful recommendations that you think fit my style, definitely let me know. Also, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to see more of my content, leave some summer emojis in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought of this video, and I hope to see you all soon in the next one. Bye!